Hello friends, welcome back to Mains Answer Writing Basics program being conducted by Team India for IAS. This is Manjunath Mudhol. In this video, we are going to discuss answer approach to the day 32 question. The subject for day 32 is polity. Within policy, the topic is fundamental rights. In fundamental rights, the question mainly is about Article 23 and Article 24 of the Indian Constitution. These two articles, they talk about right against exploitation. So these articles, they are not only important to the prelims perspective, also important to mains examination also. In this video, we are going to discuss a question on Article 23 and 24 and answer approach to that question. So this topic is important for UPSC upcoming mains, that is 2024, and also prelims 2025. In addition to this, the question is also important for upcoming KAS exam 2024 prelims and 2025 mains. Coming to the question, the right against exploitation is enshrined in the Indian Constitution to safeguard individuals from various forms of exploitation. So, to safeguard individuals from various forms of exploitation, analyze how this right is protected under the Constitution, and discuss the effectiveness of the legislative and judicial measures to enforce this right. So the question, it contains two parts. In the first part, we should talk about right against exploitation. Then in the second part, we should analyze how this right is protected under the Constitution, and we should discuss the effectiveness of legislative and judicial measures to enforce this right. So in order to enforce right against exploitation, there are judicial and legislative measures. So we have to assess the effectiveness of these measures. So the question is for 15 marks and 250 words. Now we will discuss answer approach to the question that we have discussed, that is day 32 question on right against exploitation. So in the introduction, we should explain right against exploitation as provided by the Indian Constitution. Then we should mention its significance in protecting individuals from exploitation. So constitutional provisions ಮತ್ತೆ significance ನಾವು introduction ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೆದ್ರೆ, so that will be a good introduction. So then we should talk about the next thing is the question asks, right against exploitation is enshrined in the Indian Constitution to safeguard individuals from various forms of exploitation. So that is the first part of the question. So first part of the question ನಾವು explain ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. So ಏನೆಲ್ಲ ಬರೀಬೋದು ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಕಾನ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಷನಲ್ ಪ್ರೊವಿಷನ್ಸ್ ನ ಮೆನ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. So we should elaborate on Article 23. So Article 23, it prohibits human trafficking and forced labor. So it prohibits human trafficking, and forced labor. So this constitutes the essence of Article 23. Then we should talk about Article 24. Article 24, it prohibits the employment of children in hazardous conditions and factories. So it prohibits child labor. It prohibits the child labor. So that is the essence of Article 24. So this constitutes the first part of the question, that is right against exploitation is enshrined in the Indian Constitution to safeguard individuals from various forms of exploitation. So that is the answer. This is the answer for that part of the question, that is about right against exploitation. Now we have to address the second part, that is analyzing the effectiveness of legislative and judicial measures taken to enforce this right. So first we have to address the legislative measures. So in order to implement the provisions of Article 23 and 24, the government of India and various state governments have come up with laws. So the first one is we should talk about the Bonded Labor System Act, the Bonded Labor System Abolition Act 1976. So this act, it abolishes the bonded labor and provides for its rehabilitation. So those who are involved in the bonded labor, they should be rehabilitated. So that is the first act. Then the second legislative measure is the Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Act 1986. So this act, it prohibits the child labor in certain hazardous occupations, and it regulates the conditions of work for the children. So then third, we should talk about the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993. It establishes the National Human Rights Commission to address issues of exploitation and human rights violation in India. Apart from these three legislative measures, you can also write other legislative measures which are relevant, which enforce the Article 23 and 24. Now we should talk about the judicial measures, how the judiciary interpreted or come up with the verdicts which implement the provisions of Article 23 and 24. So here we should talk about the landmark judgments by the Supreme Court and High Courts that have expanded the interpretation of the right against exploitation and addressed issues related to forced labor and child labor. So we should mention here the judgments. So you can write any judgments. There is no rule that you should write the judgments that we are quoting here. So you can write your own judgments which enforce the provisions of Article 23 and 24. So then coming to its effectiveness and challenges. So in effectiveness, what we should write: to what extent the bonded labor, child labor has been reduced or eliminated in India. So this is the effectiveness. So here we can come up, we can write, say we can quote the Lancet report. In the Lancet report, there are statistics related to child labor that we can write. Then Bachpan Bachao Andolan. Bachpan Bachao Andolan. This Andolan, it is being run by Nobel laureate Kailash Satyarthi. He is the main advocate for the child rights and he is working against the child labor. So this Bachpan Bachao Andolan, it also comes up with the child labor statistics that we can quote here to emphasize the effectiveness of the various constitutional, legislative and judicial measures. Then we should also talk about the bonded labor or forced labor, its status in India. So that indicates the effectiveness. Then in the next part, we should talk about challenges. In challenges, we should write the inadequate implementation and enforcement of legislative measures, then corruption and lack of awareness among the victims, then economic and social factors that are contributing to the exploitation of the vulnerable section of society. So that we should write. After writing challenges, we should also make some suggest some measures or recommendations in order to overcome those challenges. So what are the some good measures to overcome such challenges are: strengthening law enforcement and judicial mechanisms, enhancing awareness and education among vulnerable communities, providing better support and rehabilitation services to victims, promoting economic empowerment and social security for marginal groups. So we have to write some 3 to 4 measures. So whatever I have read out now, these are the measures that you can write. So these measures are available in the handout which is there in the telegram group or in WhatsApp group which you can download. So after writing recommendations, then we should write the conclusion. So in the conclusion, we should summarize the importance of the rights right against exploitation and its role or significance in upholding the other rights. Then we should emphasize the need for continuous efforts to ensure effective protection and enforcement of this right. So why this right against exploitation is very important? Why continuous monitoring of the implementation of this right is crucial, that we should emphasize. So that becomes the conclusion. This is all about day 32 question answer approach. Again we will meet in day 32 question answer approach. Till then, happy learning.